Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? So, if you were worried, well, Kirk Cousins officially signed and then he officially spoke to the media. We'll get to some of his thoughts and some of the important things that he said.
Good morning, Raider Nation. Unlike Kirk Cousins, I'm not going to always be politically correct in everything I say, but it's good to have him in the house. It's good to have him join the Raiders. We'll talk about it.
Do I have to follow that up? That was great stuff. Let's just get right into it, man. It's the Raider Squad Show. Let's go.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? Remember, if you like the content and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels, and you'll see in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. Also, keep in mind that this is an interactive show, so if you have any questions or comments in that fourth and final segment, Link and Q are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. And coming up in that third segment, we're going to be talking about running back depth. Of course, Najee Harris made a visit to the Raiders, but where will the Raiders draft a running back? Will they draft a running back? We'll get into that in that third and final segment before questions and comments with Link and Q. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about Fernando Mendoza, his decision on the draft. But obviously, I think we got to get started with the Kirk Cousins presser. And we are going to be playing some audio from it before we get into that. Link, just your thoughts on Kirk Cousins and, just how he was introduced by the Raiders and just your thoughts on them bringing in a veteran like him.
Well, I mean, first of all, we had talked on Tuesday's show that Q had mentioned that he had not yet signed, and then all of a sudden it got signed and everything else kind of fell in line. So I'm happy that things are taking part as they should. I'm not surprised by Kirk Cousins being in the building. I'm not surprised by, quarterbacks and coaches get all the interviews, and they're supposed to be. So they have a presence that's established in front of the media usually. And Kirk Cousins is a veteran. He's been around for a long time, been dealing with a lot of teams and a lot of adversity. So I think he said all the right things, and we'll get into it, break down more. But I'm just glad it's over with. It's taken place. Now, who I feel for is Aiden O'Connell. What does his future look like? And we talked about that before. And Kirk was, certainly responsive to Aiden and talking about, well, we're getting to know each other. Look, you're not going to hold on to three quarterbacks. You're just not going to. And if you draft Fernando Mendoza, which we expect to do, then I doubt very seriously if they relegate Aiden O'Connell to practice squad if he stays there that long. So right. That's my only concern. And when it comes to this, everything else has fell in line. What do you think, Hugh?
Yeah, look, I like the Kirk Cousins signing. I was one of the guys that talked about it from the jump, that I thought it made the most sense for all the familiarity that he's going to have with Klint Kubiak, Rick Dennison, Andrew Janocko, all those guys he's very familiar with. And again, I think it allows the Raiders to not just force feed Fernando Mendoza onto the field, but at the same time, Kirk Cousins is a competitor. He's a guy that wants to play. I mean, he let that be known that the best guy he wants out there, not saying that, hey, I'm the best guy, so put me out there, but also saying, like, I'm no slouch, right? I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm definitely going to work my tail off. I want to be out there. I don't want this to be a situation where just because the guy was drafted number 1 overall, you're going to throw him out there, right? I mean, that's a little bit of reading between the lines of what, Kirk Cousins had to say. But, yeah, for it to finally be done, he's hitting the ground running. A lot of the terminology, his words, he called it the guts of the offense. It's very familiar with what he already knew, but then he's also evolving. Right. And as the offense has evolved, he has to evolve with it. And so there's more stuff that goes into this Klint Kubiak offense that he's going to have to learn. But at least he already has the basics down. So I just think that there'll be like a sense of calm in that room because there's a guy that's been there, done that. And, and obviously him, having that familiarity with Klint Kubiak is going to go ahead.
I thought one of the interesting questions I was asked yesterday in the press conference was the fact that he had options. Why did he choose the Raiders? And much to Q's point, it made sense to me. When I heard the question, like, look, I've got the most familiarity as a veteran. If I want to play and I want to be on the field, why would I go somewhere that has new terminology or new system? Why would I go somebody who's familiar with me and I'm familiar with? Because I think that makes a perfect place for a bridge quarterback. And I don't necessarily like to use the word because I agree with Q and to much of Kirk's point, the best players should be out there in the football field. Totally agree with that. And hopefully you have that. Kirk Cousins has the opportunity to compete because he's getting in a system that he's somewhat familiar with. It has evolved over the last couple of years. We understand that. There has been some terminology change, but the concepts are still the same. You know, most people think that, we have these extensive playbooks. There's only so many ways that you can call an off-tackle run or an off-guard run. I mean, so no matter how you say it, it is what it is. And if you understand the route tree, then you understand the perspective of when an offensive coordinator is calling plays and what your reads are supposed to be. So it's not that difficult. It's not rocket science. What you want to do is you want to go for familiarity. And as an athlete, the more I take away from here and the more I make it muscle memory, the faster you'll react. And that's what you're gearing for.
Yeah, and you put it perfectly. Those are all things that Kirk Cousins said in his presser. So let's take a couple of minutes and listen to what he kind of said. And he also talked about Fernando Mendoza in this clip as well.
Yeah, it's a real privilege to work with Klint again. I think highly of him as a person. I think highly of his system, his staff, Rick Dennison, Andrew Janocko, the way they marry the run and pass. It's a system that to me makes a lot of sense. So excited to get with them again. And, same for Tom, just, not a lot of ownership groups would have someone with that kind of on-field experience that can talk ball with you at the level that he can. So, I'd like to think that can be a competitive advantage up ahead, but it's a privilege to have access, to someone like that.
What were some of the discussions, I guess, with the team and you, and how they saw your role, and maybe how you saw your role at this point in your career when you were making the decision where to go?
Yeah, I think we all want to play. I think, but I made this clear to Klint that the best player needs to play. If that's not me, I don't want to be out there. I don't think that's the best thing for the team. If I am the best option, then I believe it's important that those guys are out there. I'm excited to get the chance to lead and help influence in the locker room and do my part, do my role, and just most importantly help our team win.
As you mentioned, some of your familiarity already with Klint Kubiak and Janocko in the offense. What excites you most about being a part of the Raiders offense specifically as you watch it grow?
Yeah, I was even enjoying just the install today, hearing Rick Dennison install the run game, given all the rules. Kind of slowly walking through the base fundamentals because, when I was a younger player and you start to hear these basic things, you can easily tune out because you think, that's just basic stuff. Let's get to the really interesting stuff later. But what I've learned as I've gotten older is everything builds on that foundation. And so it's days like today when you're just installing the most basic rules that everything else you do that may be more interesting later, it all comes because of what we have as our foundation. So I was taking notes like it was day one for me as a rookie today because I don't want to miss those details. And Klint made that very clear in his presentation in the pass game that, we go through this again and again and again to create a true system. And that was like oxygen to me to hear that because I think it's so important that we have an identity, we have a system, and we stick to it. And I think that's what this coaching staff has done really well for many years wherever they've been.
Kirk, Alexibel Castro, News 3. Welcome to Las Vegas.
Thank you.
You mentioned this morning at the end of last season that you found your love for the game again. How does that shape this new chapter for you in Las Vegas?
Yeah, there certainly was a joy getting off the plane, getting picked up, heading to do all my logistical things to join a new team. There was a joy and excitement being here. Partly probably it has to do with the tradition of this organization, specifically getting to put on this logo, one of the coolest, logos in all of professional sports. So it just feels like a real privilege to be here. I remember having that feeling, Hondo, when I was at Michigan State as a freshman, like getting to wear that Spartan head and being a part of that just felt like such a privilege, and I have that feeling today. So, I just think it's a beautiful place to live, beautiful place to be, and it's a great opportunity.
So he later also talked about working with Fernando Mendoza and his role in the Klint Kubiak system. And he said, listen, whoever the best quarterback is, day one, week one, that's who should be playing. And I think that he actually believes that he's going to be the best quarterback that's going to be available. But Q, what were your thoughts on just a couple of things that he said there and, his decision to come and play for the Raiders as well?
Well, he talked about, the phone call that he had on Good Morning Football. He talked about the conversation he had with Tom Brady and the FaceTime that he had with Tom Brady. And Brady rolled out the vision for the team moving forward. And I think it was very noticeable that Tom Brady was there on the first day of, the offseason workout plan, which I think tells you a lot, right? That he's locked in on this product being turned around as well, which I think is a welcome sight, because for the longest, people have asked Link, people have asked you, people have asked me, well, what's Tom Brady's role? What's Tom Brady's role? And I don't think any of us can actually define and say, well, this is exactly what he's doing. This is what he's not doing. But when he shows up on the very first day of the workout, the offseason workout program, when Klint Kubiak gets to speak to the team for the very first time, and then all of a sudden you've got Tom Brady there as well, and he's there bright and early, I think that kind of sets on, right? And a couple things that, Kirk Cousins has talked about when it comes to, like you mentioned, the best player being out there. I think that it's all going to be about an opportunity to go out there and put your best foot forward and get this thing turned around, this organization turned around. And they know it's not going to be, some overnight success, but they're at the same time going to do everything they can to get the train on the track and trend in the right direction. And so I can appreciate what, Kirk Cousins says. Clearly he wouldn't be with the Raiders if there wasn't a real opportunity for him, at least in his mind, to be able to play. So when he goes out there and says, I just want the best guy out there, it's not saying that, I think that this rookie is going to be so good that he's going to be out there and I don't want to play if I'm not the best. He's letting it be known, I want that opportunity. If, you're coming out of training camp and everyone could clearly see that I'm the best guy, I want to start. If I'm not, so be it. But he believes that he can start, and he might be able to hold down that spot for a little while. And depending on how the Raiders are playing, then, you might roll with Kirk Cousins for a while before you ever think about passing the sticks on to Fernando Mendoza.
What's funny to me is that I've always thought that quarterbacks in the NFL make some of the best politicians out there. They just always know what the right thing to say. And some head coaches know the right thing to say. And like I said, Kirk Cousins has been a veteran. He's been around. In politics speaking, I go back to his Atlanta situation. Atlanta signs him to a big deal. Then they draft Michael Penix. That totally sideswiped him. I have to believe that totally sideswiped him. With everything that he was doing. And then thinking, how am I going to compete? Obviously got to go compete and do my job, but you have to look over your shoulder because, this first rounder is waiting to just frothing at the mouth to be on the football field.
Yep.
This is a different situation. He's walking into the situation, understanding the possibility the Raiders might draft a quarterback with the number 1 pick. There's going to be certain expectations by the Raider Nation to go out there and have Fernando Mendoza play. And he understands that. He understands that pressure. That's why he takes it on. The familiarity that he has with the coaching staff and this offense helps him and guides him to be a better starter, possibly a day 1 starter. And I do think he's going to be a day 1 starter. I think there's a learning curve for Fernando Mendoza when he gets drafted to come to the Raiders. But I know there are going to be people at the Raider Nation who are just waiting and itching to get him out on the football field. Patience. Because what this program needs most, more than anything, besides looks, it needs wins. It just needs wins to build confidence. I'm not saying they're going to turn it over and get 12, 15 wins. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But anymore, they got to get more than 3. You got to show that you're heading in the right direction. And much to Q's point, and Shantelle, you said this as well, sis, that this is not going to be a quick turnaround. This is going to be a process. So within that process, let's put the best players on the field, regardless of where they've been drafted, regardless of who they are, regardless of how much they make, put the best players on the field. You leave it up to your evaluating crew to make sure that they got the best players out there. But more importantly, you leave it up to your coaching staff to deal with the best players you have available in your roster.
And Shantelle, going back to Link's point on that goes back to the question that you asked, I believe, on Tuesday when we were asked about, a win total, what we thought the win total was being. And I said, I don't know. I can't put a number on it, especially right now. We haven't seen anything. I don't have a win total. Right. I'll be perfectly honest. I know that at some point when we go through the schedule, we'll do the, how many wins or what we see. Everyone does that. But to Lincoln's point, you need to see growth. You need to see this team build. You need to see that you understand what they're working to achieve, right? You should be able to sit at the house, watch the game and say, okay, I see this team getting better. What I saw week 1 from this team and what I'm seeing in week 8 is a lot of growth. This team is going in the right direction. Like, we should be able to walk away from the game, whether we're at the game or watching on TV, listening to it on the radio, and understand that I see what they're doing. They're trending in the right direction. They're building. The secondary is getting a lot, they're all on the same page. They're communicating with each other. The defensive line is nasty. Oh, the offensive line is coming together, right? Because, look, again, it's not going to come together day 1. That offensive line in week 1 is going to look a lot different in week 8, right? And I don't mean necessarily personnel. I mean the way that they go out there and execute. And again, if you don't believe that, go back and watch Seattle last year. Seattle about 3/4 of the way through the season, was still struggling picking up that offensive line blocking scheme. It's going to be a work in progress. Rick Dennison is one of the best in the business, so I know that he's going to be able to teach it the right way, coach it the right way, have the players, be in the right position to go execute it. But it's like Lincoln says, you don't get better without the reps. It's going to take reps. It's going to take reps, and it's going to take reps. So what they do starting the season and where they are about midway through the season, I'm expecting my expectations as an individual, not even as a media member, just as an individual, is to see the growth and understand that this is where they're going.
And that's what happens when you have a veteran quarterback. You have that possibility of growth. Sometimes
Right.
you have a little bit of regression, but when you have a veteran quarterback, and that's why I think that he's going to be day one starter.
Well, and to that point, with the sound that we heard from him, normally when we talk about a quarterback and we talk about an offense that he's familiar with, what is he talking about? Passing the ball around the yard, right? The playbook or whatever. He's talking about Rick Dennison, installing the running game.
Yep.
How often do we, generally, how often do we sit there and talk about the quarterback talking about the offensive line coach installing the running game? Like, we don't ever do that, but that is so important. That is a level of it, and the quarterback is part of that, and he'll actually help to be able to communicate with the offensive lineman, with the running backs. Like, he's all part of that, and that's why when he's talking about, it's just the basics right now, but just watching Rick Dennison install that, it got him going. It got fired up, and that's what that coaching staff that all is familiar with each other. They've all, been at every step of the way with each other. They all know what they're doing, and they're all on the same page, rowing in the same direction, which is very important, something we didn't see last year.
I also tip my hat because he gave some love to the tackles, the importance of tackles.
Yeah.
Talking about Colton Miller. So I also tip my hat. Said the right things. I like that. I like that, QB. Say the right things. Take care of your tackles.
Yeah, he's got to be tight with the tackles. Another thing that I really liked about Kirk Cousins during this presser is he just seemed refreshed. He seemed refreshed being there. He looked really happy being there, and he knows his role going forward. I think he still believes that he's going to be under center week one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's different from, I know a lot of Raider fans were, on Twitter saying it's kind of similar to when Pete brought in Geno, but it's really not because he knows the system. He knows Klint Kubiak. He knows Andrew Janoko, and he had his most successful season, you could argue, under Klint Kubiak. So I think there are definitely some positives there. In terms of Fernando Mendoza and his role, both of you have said that they don't have to throw him out there, that this is the perfect way to kind of protect him, because that's what you want to do when you have a young quarterback and you're drafting him. Link, if he wasn't to play the whole entire year, because it is possible that Kirk Cousins has a really good year. And when your quarterback's playing well, I don't think you deter from him. You stay with him. So if that was a possibility, would you kind of be upset, though, just in terms of someone that is excited to see someone like Fernando Mendoza on the field?
In all honesty, sis, I would have mixed reactions, because if the Raiders were winning and trending in the right direction, I wouldn't like to see your star rookie sit the entire year, but I understand.
Right.
You know what I mean? I get it. The thing is that there's so many possibilities here and so many certain different scenarios that I ran through my mind, especially when I heard Kirk Cousins was on the horizon. One of the things that stood out to me was a quarterback who was capable of taking the snap under center.
Yep.
Now, I heard Fernando Mendoza has been working at it, and I don't know where he is, and I'm not tracking him like that. But that's a big deal to me, because I think we need to get away from the shotgun game, in all honesty, especially running 12 personnel. That's just me, okay? But with that being said, when you talk about the evolution of possibly Fernando Mendoza, I know he's the future. If the Raiders pick him, he's the future. There's no doubt about it. But much to Q's point, and I feel the same way, I want to see them trending in the right direction. So if Kurt is winning, I'm not saying that he's going to, lights out. I'm not saying that. But if he's winning or they're trending in the right direction, why would you mess something if it's not broken?
Man, facts. Yeah, you dance with the one that brought you. Right. I mean, it's simple as that. Look, and I had this question thrown at me the other day on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Well, what if the Raiders are winning and then they can't bench Kirk Cousins? Okay, that's fine. I mean, hey, look, if I ever come to any show or any platform I'm on, is like, you know what, Raider Nation, there's a problem. The Raiders are winning. The quarterback.
There goes your job.
I'll worry about that problem. Let me solve that problem. Right. Well, can't get the rookie out there because the Raiders keep winning. That's great. Let me deal with that. I'll take that. If that's the problem.
Uh-oh.
I think Q froze a little bit there, right when he was about to get to his great point.
True story. There he is.
Okay, so you're back. You just finished your thought there, Q, because
if that's the problem that the Raiders have is that they're winning and they can't figure out when to get their quarterback in, their rookie quarterback, I'll take that problem. That's a good problem to have.
True story.
Yeah, and I think Fernando Mendoza is a good fit because I feel like just from what we know from him, he's open to learning and he's open to learning from Kirk Cousins. So he'd be like the perfect quarterback to be in that situation if that situation did occur. Now, other than the presser, there were a few notes as well. The Raiders re-signed Ian Thomas, tight end, and they also re-signed linebacker Charles Snowden. Link, were those some signings that you like really weren't surprised about thinking about their role the past
Not
few
really.
years?
I thought if you got them for a good price, you could re-sign those veterans, and I think they did. So it made sense. I mean, we talked about it at extension. The fact that, that last year they played with 22 possible, 1-year deals, prove-it contracts. So, it just made sense. It's practical. You don't have to totally revamp your entire roster. If you have some good players that are serviceable within your system, just keep them.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, you need depth. At the end of the day, you know that you need depth. There's guys that they're going to make a bunch of signings that are going to be guys that are going to be some quality backups. You've seen some offensive linemen added as well. Yeah, it's none of those are big surprises, but guys that can play a role. I do like Charles Snowden is back. I think that the Snowman's been trending in the right direction. So I think that's a good thing as well.
Yeah, and I like the nickname the Snowman as well. Just reminds me of Jeezy. You know what I mean?
I'm about to say Jeezy.
Yeah. Can't ban the Snowman. But coming up on the other side, we are going to be talking about Fernando Mendoza and his decision on draft day. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're listening or watching the Raiders Squad Show. And a quick word from our sponsors. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. And here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. And right now, I wouldn't say bet right now. I'm not going to lie to you because it's kind of that part of the season where they're sitting their superstars in the fourth quarter. So just save your betting for the playoffs. And this is the best time. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Also, just quickly wanted to mention, don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for our free ad episodes and access to a group chat and other listeners of this show and Locked On Raiders. So you can tap the show notes as well if you're listening to this on the audio side, or you can go to lockedonraiders.supercast.com. And thanks so much, Raider Nation, for rocking out with us. Remember, if you do like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. The Locked On Network is the #1 sports podcasting network, and we do appreciate your continued support. The channel has grown, the show has grown, and whether you make Locked On Raiders your first listen of the day and then the Squad Show the second listen of the day, we do appreciate you. So one of the biggest news this week, and I feel like some people had a frenzy, some people were cool with it, lots of mixed reviews, but it was announced that Fernando Mendoza would not be attending the draft. Now, he's expected to go #1 overall. This isn't the first time a guy has not attended the draft, though. Link, your thoughts on his decision on not attending the big spectacle that the draft is.
That's just it, sis. This whole thing has become a big spectacle. I mean, it's the NFL's version of the Oscars. Hey, Shantelle, you look great. Who are you wearing? Give me a break. Look, first of all, rookies get relegated to the bottom of the list, no matter where they come in at, okay? They're a rookie from a veteran. Speaking from a veteran standpoint, you got to prove yourself on this level. Yes, all the fandom, all the stardom that comes out of it, absolutely, enjoy it. But going up and chest bumping and hugging a person you never met before, Roger Goodell, or one of the other people on the stage, what does that do? It just makes a spectacle. It makes a show. So congratulations, Fernando. I commend you. If you want to be with your family, so be it. The cameras are going to be at your house anyway. So they're going to follow you. It doesn't have to be where you have that awkward. And I felt so sorry for guys that you see that are in that waiting room and hadn't got picked yet. And you have the pundits up there, speculating where they go. Well, he can go here, he can go. The draft is already a nerve-wracking process. I was drafted #9 overall when I came out in '93. I was fortunate to go when I did, but I sweated through at least 3 shirts on the possibility where I was going to go. So I did not want to be in front of the cameras. I did not want to be in New York in front of that spectacle, that train. And it has evolved to that because now you look at the sort of following the draft carries. Every city it goes, it becomes a big spectacle. And who knows what half these guys are going to do in the next level. if they're even going to be relevant. We can hope, and we absolutely said, well, when he was drafted in 2006, this is what he wore. Well, don't miss me with that. Play. This is football, okay? It's become a spectacle. So congratulations, Fernando. Do your thing. I'm proud of you.
Well, no, I agree with Link 100%. Like, hey, he chooses to stay at home with his family, which is the choice he made. That's awesome. I laughed when Adam Schefter put out the tweet that he wasn't going to be there, and I was like, well, I quote tweeted. I said, well, less than ideal. And when I said that from my point of view, because I know that I'll be there covering it. And so I always like to be able to provide the coverage. I always like to be able to talk to the guy when he comes off the stage, get the interview. From that sense, that's all I cared about, right? And so it was so funny to see, and still to see, all the pushback. You would have thought that I like dog cuss someone's mom. It was so funny. And I was like, look, again, I don't mind what the young man wants to do. There's plenty of people that have decided to stay home, look, Joe Thomas most famously went fishing with his dad on the day of the draft, right? Yeah. I don't have any problem, again, from my point of view, just for the coverage sake, being there, going to be at in the draft at Pittsburgh, just like I'm at the draft every year. Would have loved to seen him come off the stage and get an opportunity to talk to him, but there'll be so many times to talk to him. Not a big deal. It was just so funny to see the reaction and people, how dare you say something? I was like, yeah, how dare me on my own Twitter account say something that has to do with me? I don't know why I would ever do something like that on my own account, but it was pretty funny. So if that's the biggest fallout from it, it's all good. Like, he's a big family guy. I know that. We obviously, it's well chronicled about his mom, and so I know that he wants to be there, make sure that the whole family is in attendance, and for that, his best opportunity is to do that at home in Miami. Lincoln's absolutely right. There's going to be cameras everywhere, so it's not like there won't be tons of coverage of him. It just won't be coverage by me, and that's okay, because like I said, there's plenty of times that I'll get a chance to talk to him, so no big deal. But man, I'll tell you, it was another lesson in people want to be angry for something. and man, they sure were angry the other day. But hey, we keep on trucking along.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, what did Q do? And then I saw it. You just said whelp, and I was like, he didn't do anything. I get what you're saying, because you have to provide the coverage. But like you mentioned, you're going to go ahead.
The thing is, and for people that don't understand, like, we have to go through all the travel plans. We have to set up in advance. We have to get Airbnbs. We have to get planes. And so all that, get our sponsors in line. So again, from my point of view, from going through all that process to make sure that we're there to do all that, and that already being done, then all of a sudden it's like, well, nope, he's not going to be there. But with that being said, it's going to be a fantastic week of coverage. I'm going to get to talk to many different analysts. I'll talk to all the different players in the green room that are going to be there. And who knows? Right? The Raiders could, for all we know, they could trade back into the first round, and I could be sitting right there and talk to another first round. I mean, you just don't know how the draft plays out. So it's going to be a fantastic time. Like I said, it was less than ideal for me for about 12 seconds. I'm way past it. I'm just ready for, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, the draft going on in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Link, you mentioned that at the draft, you sweated through like 3 shirts. You were really nervous. If you could go back and do it in a private setting with your family, would you do it that way?
I did it in a private setting.
Okay, you did.
I did it. Yeah, I did it. I had my agent rented out a ballroom in Dallas, where my agent was from. So we had my whole family and all my friends there, and it was very personal. Yeah, I didn't want any parts of New York. And back in that day, that's when the draft was held. I didn't want any parts of it because I wanted to be with my family. And for me, I was on the hook because we knew what the first 2 picks were going to be. The first 2 picks were Drew Bledsoe 1 to the Patriots and Rick Meyer to the Seattle Seahawks. But after that, I was on the line with every team with the possibility of going there. And so 15 minutes apart with picks, I'm sitting here and talking with general managers, coaches. Hey, do you want to be this guy? Do you want to be this? And all I ever wanted from the draft was to be the first tackle taken. That's all I wanted. Willie Roaf went to New Orleans in the pick before me. And that made sense because he was from Louisiana Tech. But, and my agent told me about that. But all I wanted to be was the first lineman taken off the board. So I went through several shirts just sweating. Am I going to be a Bengal? Am I going to be a Bear? Am I going to do all this stuff while you're waiting? And you don't know what's going to happen because even your representation only has a certain amount of information. And they'll either look at you like, yeah, it's a possibility, depending on the relationship they have with particular teams. So every experience is different. But I've seen the draft evolve into something that is more of a show, than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
when I see guys coming up, walking up, prior to NIL, when I see guys walking up on stage with custom-made suits, all this bling, they're already in debt before they even made their first contract.
Right.
Because they want to show off. Shantelle, who are you wearing? I got Versace on today, dog. You know how I'm flowing? And then they're hoping that it's the color that the team drafts them.
Yeah.
But what happens if it's not? what happens if you wear a purple suit and you get drafted by the Green Bay Packers? It's things like that. So, I mean, it's just, I can go on and on.
Yeah. And, you know, it's really interesting that you say that as well, because like, I don't remember watching it growing up and it being like that big of a deal. Now it's like, it's on prime time. There's a lot of production that goes into it. You guys have both been on big broadcasts before, and you know the type of production that they put on for the NFL draft. My next question would probably be, Q, what are you wearing? Are you wearing Versace? Because that's me. What are you wearing to the draft?
You see it. I'm a Nike Tech hoodie guy. You see it every day. Nothing changes, man. Nothing changes. So and it's in Pittsburgh. Last year it was in Green Bay. Look, I'll tell you this. I enjoy the traveling circus that it is become, because it just allows me to see things that I've never seen. Like, I try to tell people about this, and I'm not trying to make it too personal, but I tell people about this opportunity and what we do on the daily and how it's taken me places I would never go. I was in Green Bay last year for the draft. Like, that's Lambeau Field. That's amazing, right? And so this year I'll be in Pittsburgh. That's going to be amazing, right? I mean, just all these different drafts, all these different locations, going to cities where they don't necessarily get Super Bowls. I think that's a really big deal. I thought I would never, ever want to go to Nashville. Guess what? Going to Nashville for the draft was fantastic. If you told me, hey, we're going to go on vacation and we're going to go to Nashville, sign me up. Fantastic city. I would have never known that, right? They had the draft even in Arlington when I was still in Texas, and I was like, okay, whatever. And it was cool, right? I mean, it's just, I think Philadelphia, right? When they first did it outside for the first time, right? Chicago was the first time that they weren't in New York, you know, and so those areas, to have the draft come there and to see all the fans, like I tell people all the time, that's my favorite event of the NFL calendar is the NFL draft, because there's 32 fan bases that are fired up about that guy that's about to walk across the stage. And that guy might not end up being worth the salt. But for that moment that he goes across the stage and shakes the hand of the commissioner or gets his name announced, and if he's there or not, every fan of that team believes that's the difference maker that's going to take that team over the top. And so to see their excitement and see all 32 fan bases represented in one location in a big old amphitheater like they have for the draft, it's really a great event. I tell people all the time, if you have a chance to go just once, take your family, take your friends, whatever the case may be, your kids, do it, just because you won't be disappointed. It is a really, really fun event.
I will follow up and say I do like the fact that the draft travels. I do like that. I think that's cool. And I thought when they started doing that, I thought it was a good idea. I wish they would do that with some of the exhibition games, because there are some fan bases that in places that don't get football. And why can't you travel to a place like Wyoming or something like that and play, Denver and Seattle or something like that? I mean, I would like to see them expand that. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do like the fact that the draft travels around and gives, certain cities a chance to showcase, because it's been elevated. Yeah. You go back to when it started, you go back to Vegas, you go back to Philly and all these places. I mean, people have really gotten into it. The cities have thrown out the full gold carpet, for everything and just put it on, and fans have been welcome. And much to Q's point, there's a lot of times where fans don't necessarily get a chance to visit these cities. But if you're traveling, following your team and your fan base, why not?
The one thing that I do want to mention, this kind of off topic, is we just talked about like traveling the NFL draft. Do either of you like the international series? Like when they go to Spain, when they go to Mexico City during the season, do you like that they do that?
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
I've never been there to cover, so I wouldn't know. But yeah.
Well, the fact that they're trying to make football worldwide, I remember back when I was working with the network and talking with people how they were going to try to transform that. I said, look, you have to find a way to ease travel. Travel has to be quicker for you to travel across these vast amounts of places. You can't have a New York team go and play in Japan and turn around and come back and play in New York. You can't. But if you put the way that they're doing it now, they're giving them a week. More times than not, they're giving them a bye behind it. Roger Goodell has already said he plans on having 16 games over in Europe, which I honestly think is going to happen rather sooner than later before he leaves. So you see the expansion of NFL becoming worldwide, going to Australia, possibly going to China, Japan. All of that is part of it, as long as it's safe. And the big thing, a lot of times when not the Raiders, but the NFL stopped going to Mexico is because of the safety concerns. and they had issues with that. And so if you can find a way to get over that, I don't mind the international games. I don't.
Yeah, and I like how you put it too. They're giving them like a bye week after. They're
Yeah.
giving them some time so they're not doing all this crazy travel, because that was the only thing that I didn't like about it. That the
Right.
players would have the jet lag going over, but nonetheless, it's great for the NFL. My final question, just about Fernando Mendoza and the draft. Tom Brady was obviously in the building as Fernando Mendoza had his visit, and of course, the Raiders have kind of started their training program as well. But in terms of Tom Brady's involvement, Q, you mentioned he was on the NFL Network, Good Morning Football, and they talked about how he FaceTimed Kirk Cousins. How important is it, and how much do you think of value it is that Tom is more involved than ever? Like, does that give the Raiders more cachet, even though the Raiders don't need cachet because they're a historic brand?
I think it just gives them a little bit more credibility, right? I mean, just because, these players, especially free agents that they're trying to bring in, especially quarterbacks. I mean, if you're a quarterback like Kirk Cousins and you have Tom Brady FaceTiming you and saying, hey, man, this is the plan. This is what we want you to be a part of. This is what we're trying to build here. I think that goes a long way. If Link calls me and says, hey, Q, hey, man, I want you to be a part of what I got going on. This is what look, that's Lincoln Kennedy. if I look at my phone and Lincoln Kennedy's calling, guess who's answering? This guy. Right? There's certain guys that if someone's calling you or reaching out, you answer that phone, right? You answer that phone and you listen to the message and you make your own decision what you want to do. But if you're a quarterback, like,
I like that pause where he said he's got it down like, yeah.
Something.
Okay, go ahead. Finish your point. Finish your point,
brother. I don't know what it is. The internet hates me today, but so there's that. But if Tom Brady's calling you, man, you definitely want to answer.
I think overall, when the end of the season was announced and it was, Spytek and Brady were going to be in charge of building this team, I think it gives value when you hear from one of the owners. The fact is, the same thing would be called to me if Mark Davis called me. And talking about it's the same, it holds the same value. It gives value to the presence of what we're trying to do as a team or what they're trying to do as an organization. So it makes sense. It really does.
Yeah. And coming up on the other side, we're going to talk about whether or not it makes sense to draft a running back earlier in maybe round 3 or 4. So we'll do that next on the other side. Keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. And a quick word from our sponsors. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. Trying to book an appointment that's not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax has now in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment. All right, welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, in that fourth and final segment, which is coming up next, Q and Link are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. So if you're on YouTube, get them in the chat right now. If you're listening to this on the audio side, because you can find us wherever you get Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows, we're there too. You can always drop a comment to us on our YouTube page or reach out to us on Twitter, and we may be able to get to your question or comment on another episode. But I wanted to talk about the running back situation because Najee Harris visited not too long ago. Klint Kubiak has said that he would like a 2-back tandem. That's what they did in Seattle, and it was very, very successful. And there are some veterans that are on the market that are still available that the Raiders could bring in, but there's a big possibility where they could look for a running back in the draft. Now, Link, if you were the GM, would you look to drafting a running back earlier or later? I know they always say never draft a running back too early. They always say that, but at the same time, if a good player is available and they're sitting there, would you think about it just because there is Ashton Genty and, he might need a partner as well?
I do believe you have to have a running back community in that room. I believe you have to have running back in tandems and possibly threes, depending on how hard they play and they're part of the system. So I believe it's running back by committee. I really do. But here's the thing. My two issues are I won't overpay for a veteran free agent because they'll want their shine. you have to justify warrant and paying them a big contract, especially if you're Ashton Genty's my back. I'm going into the season knowing Ashton Genty is my feature back. So I'm not going to overpay for a free agent. So you can get somebody at a bargain basement price when somebody wants to prove a contract. Sure, I don't have a problem with that, a veteran. But as far as the draft's concerned, sis, I wouldn't draft a running back in the early rounds because this team has so many other needs that it needs to address. With that being said, I'd be looking to the later rounds, probably 5th, 6th, or 7th, or possibly free agent, if there's somebody that's still available. And one name that kind of came to mind as far as drafting later rounds, and I was impressed with him, I don't know how he fell off because I didn't follow him when he transferred to Oklahoma, was Cal's running back Jaden Ott. Because I covered him a lot when I was doing Pac-12 games. I thought he ran well. I thought he caught up well in the backfield. I thought he showed very, very similarities to Ashton Genty's game, which I think falls in line with this style of offense. So I think you can get him in the 6th round, possibly the 5th or 6th round. So that's the only time I would try to justify drafting a running back. But this team has so many other needs that are dire, more desperate than drafting a second running back.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, look, there's two different thoughts in this. And like you said, Klint Kubiak's talked about he wants a wingman. I would probably, if
Oh man, the internet today is a problem, y'all. But we're gonna get Q back in just a moment. Sorry, go ahead, Q. You're back. We're happy you're back.
I don't know, man. I don't know what it is. The internet
doesn't want to hear you talking, man.
Apparently, the internet is against me today. I don't know what it is, but Raheem Mostert is who I would sign as a veteran, just because he was in the building. He knows this system as far as the blocking scheme. He knows how to do that, so that would work. Or else I would do like Lincoln said. I'd draft a running back in the 6th, maybe 7th round, even undrafted, just to be the wingman to Ashton Genty. But I wouldn't, overdraft a running back knowing you've got Genty already.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, just in terms of if you're looking for other positions that you feel are more needed. So you guys are thinking the 6th or 7th round. Are there any other players that you kind of like as running backs that you think the Raiders may go for?
No, I mean, I haven't really looked at. You gave the assignment, and I looked. No, in a sense where you made us think about it, and I hadn't thought about it. That's why I did the research on Jaden Ott, and I didn't realize that he fell as far as he did. But when coming into this draft, my evaluation, I never looked at running back because we got a running back.
Right.
Yeah.
So for the draft. That, and I heard about, the possibility of free agent signings, and I agree with, Q. I mean, Raheem would be, I think, a good guy to bring back because he's familiar with the system, familiar with the organization. But don't overpay for a free agent. That's my only thing. Do not overpay for a free agent. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you could get Najee Harris on a cheap deal. I was surprised that they didn't bring back Raheem Mostert just yet. But Q, are you more so for bringing in an older veteran?
I mean, it depends. The 1-year deal I would take. I had no problem with Najee Harris. I think the fact that we haven't heard anything about his visit probably tells you that he's not as healthy as they'd like him to be. So that's just, I mean, look, he's coming off a torn Achilles. So again, that's something that's very concerning, especially for the running back position. That's why I would lean Raheem Mostert. He's got to be healthy. He already has a relationship with Genty. He's been proven to be a really good running back in this league. If you can get him on a cheap deal, great. If not, like I said, I literally would just go draft a running back late in the draft. If this offensive line blocking scheme works the way they're supposed to, most running backs run in this system really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised as to why either of you wouldn't be looking at it, just because we do have Ashton Genty. And when it comes to the two-back tandem, though, I'm also thinking, okay, so the Raiders have Ashton Genty right now, but also last year they did have a Raheem Mostert, so they did have a Zamir White. So now I'm looking at the depth, the running back room, and I'm like, there's not a lot of depth there other than Ashton Genty, even though he's a workhorse and he gets better as he continues to have the ball in his hands. But Link, if you're thinking about it in that aspect about the running back depth, are you concerned about that at all?
Well, you're always concerned about depth because there's always injuries. That's a variable that happens in every time. We understood that Ashton was a workhorse, and there was times we couldn't pull him off the field, but there was also times he got up gaping a little bit, you know what I mean, or limping a little bit. So there's a possibility. That's why I believe you got to have running back by committee. There's got to be more than one. And much to Q's point, if there's someone who's familiar with the system, or someone who's familiar with the zone run system, they can help out and contribute. But this offense is much more than just running the football. We need backs catching out of the backfield. You need to evolve the screen game. There's so much more that has to happen. So you have to have a versatile back who's capable of doing all those things, like Ashton Jeanty is, in case that he goes down.
I think the biggest key is going to be not investing a whole lot into the position.
Right.
I mean, and again, I'm not trying to devalue the running back, but you have your Cadillac already in Ashton Jeanty, right? You don't need multiples, right? You want the guy that can spell him, could be, running back by committee, like Link said, his wingman, like Klint Kubiak said. You want a guy that can go in there and take some reps from him and have guys fresh as well, towards the end of the game. I expect a bigger workload for Ashton Jeanty this year than what we saw his rookie year. And so he's going to need a guy to also be able to take some carries, midway through the game as well. So just to keep him fresh, if for no other reason. So, yeah, there'll definitely be multiple running backs added to that room.
There's also the possibility of understanding what role Hayward is going to play, because he's listed as a fullback.
Mm-hmm.
We know they're not going to have a two-back system. I'm pretty sure they're not going to have a two-back system. But, over the years, there's been a lot to be desired with the short yardage and goal line game out of this team. Yeah. So
where's Zach Crockett when you need him? Where's Zach Crockett when you need him?
True story. So, I mean, but, so if they can get back to the basics where they can still pound the ball when they need it, short yardage and convert first downs, I think that's big. But I'm interested to see what Hayward's role in this offense is going to be as well.
Yeah, and in terms of depth, where are you most comfortable in terms of positional depth? Is it the wide receiver room? Is it the tight end group?
Right.
Like, I think that would probably be the one where I'm most comfortable. But where do you feel like the Raiders have the most depth, Q?
I mean, right now it's the tight end room, right? I mean, it's still TBD, I guess, when it comes to Michael Mayer and what they're going to do with him. And is he going to stick around? I hope he does for the final year of his deal. I hope he shows out this year in Klint Kubiak's system. I think that'd be great. They brought back Ian Thomas. I think that's a great three-headed monster right there at the tight end position. So we'll see. So I think that's probably the room that you feel most comfortable with, at least right now.
I agree with you. The most functional and complete room is the tight end room.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised there at all. I also wanted to ask you guys about the linebacker group, because, the Raiders loaded up on bringing in some linebackers, some big names during free agency. One of those names was Nakobe Dean. And for me, I think he's an absolute beast, but he's really struggled to stay healthy.
That's the key.
Right. How important is that going to be for him? And we had a segment on the last episode in terms of our Prove It segment about a couple of guys that maybe
segment got me in trouble, by the way.
Oh my God. I mean, Q, you were in trouble all week. First the Fernando Mendoza visit, and now this. I'm sorry about that, but what happened over there? Do you want
to look how he froze up?
The internet's getting you today. The internet's getting you.
Apparently. And I didn't even realize this. I was listening to the radio station like 2 days later in the morning, and a guy called in and was saying that the players have nothing to prove. It's all on the coaches. And he had something to say about what I said about players having something to prove. And it was just funny. Like it was like 7 a.m. I was like, man, I'm catching a stray. And I didn't even know what I was talking about. Like I didn't even know what the conversation was, but apparently it came from this show when you asked the question about what players have something to prove, and I rattled off like 4 or 5 of them. Apparently it's the coaches, GM, and the owner that have something to prove, and not the players. The players are really good. They came from college. They got there for a reason, so there's nothing to prove, which I don't agree with, but I all of a sudden caught a stray at 7-something in the morning, so I had to trace back my steps. I was like, wait, when did I even have this conversation? I realized it came from the Squad Show.
You're an evaluating performance-based business. You always have something to prove.
Exactly.
If you go out there and you half-ass it, you're not going to be out in the field for long. So, yeah, there's always something to prove. But, to the point, that everyone has something to prove. Coaches have something to prove. You got to prove that you can coach. Evaluators and executives have something to prove. You can, but that's why you play the game. And that's why it comes down to final records. That's why it comes down to draft position. That's why it comes down to free agency, cap space, all that stuff. All of that, has to be evaluated and proven. And it's yearly. It's always changing. It's never going to be the same. Those teams that had the luxury of running a dynasty, you have to tip your hat to them, because it doesn't always happen. As you see, there's parity in the league.
Yeah, I just want to say, y'all leave Q alone, okay?
I got to prove that my internet doesn't hate me. I feel like my internet today is from like 65 or 70 or something. Like, what's
Are you using dial-up, Q? He's not-
Feels like it. I don't know, man. What did I do to the internet today? Apparently, it hates me. I don't. My apologies. I don't know what's
that old connected to
Exactly.
the phone line, right?
Yeah, there's some hamsters in the back, out back, running in the wheel, trying to keep this thing going. Apparently, I don't know what's going on.
You are connected.
I mentioned Kobe Dean though because the linebacker group I think looks a lot better. And they talk about
On
the
paper.
3-4 base. Yes, okay, so that's perfect. So on paper, like I'm extremely excited. But like,
As am I.
do you think they go in the draft and try to add to it? Like, do you think what they have is enough in terms of depth?
They need some more.
They need more.
Okay.
They need more.
They need more. I think they're going to draft 2 linebackers in a draft that's very deep in linebackers. I think they'll draft 2. Honestly, I would love to see them walk away with Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. I think that he'll probably go before they're ready to grab a linebacker. But man, I think that dude's a heck of a leader. He'll go find the ball. He's just one of those guys. I would love to see him added to the mix, especially blend him with the veterans that they brought in.
Yeah. I think they might need that. I didn't know the overall number of how many they have in the locker room. I mean, in that room right now. But you always have to have depth, especially when you're playing a multi-position defense like the 3-4.
And I wouldn't mind if they traded back and grabbed Anthony Hill Jr. I was getting killed. I was like, they need to grab him in the 3rd round or the 2nd round. I think he'll go in between the 2nd and the 3rd, but he's an absolute stud. But coming up on the other side, we are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. So if you're watching this on YouTube right now, get them in the chat. If you're listening to this on the audio side, make sure to drop some comments later on, and we may be able to get to it on the next episode. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. And a quick break there, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. And also remember that this is an interactive show, so we do appreciate you. We appreciate you liking, subscribing, sharing the content because it helps the channel grow. And we appreciate you rocking with us. For almost a year, we've been doing this, guys. It's getting pretty close to that.
Already?
Well, it's getting pretty close to that. Yeah, I think it was like June and so we're a couple of months away.
What are you guys giving me for my birthday? I'm just kidding.
That's true. That's true. Well, we got to think about it.
Hey, man, I'm still working on the internet, man. Hold on.
That's true. We're trying to get Q off dial up. That's what we're trying to do. All right, let's go over to a good friend of the show, DJ Raider AZ Squad. What do you think the chances are that the Raiders draft 2 quarterbacks and trade AOC, just like Cousins' draft day experience? That's interesting.
That is overkill. I thought the Commanders, who were the Redskins at the time when they did it, I thought that was overkill. Why would you draft, RG3 and then you turn around in the 4th round and draft Kirk Cousins?
Yeah,
didn't make much sense. But I don't think that's warranted. I don't think that's necessary, to be honest with you, because if you have Kirk Cousins, even if you traded Aiden O'Connell, and I do think they will, and you pick up a free agent quarterback just to have in your practice squad. You're drafting Fernando Mendoza. It's a wasted pick if you pick another quarterback in this draft.
Yeah. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, no, I think that that they won't draft 2 like Washington did. I think Washington did because they knew that RG3 had an opportunity to possibly get injured, and we saw what happened to him because going back to college, he had an injury history as well. Not to mention that what Kirk Cousins did fit in with that Shanahan scheme really well. So I think that they got him as an extra insurance policy. I think the Raiders hold on to O'Connell just to see what happens throughout the course of training camp, and then they'll probably try to move him, towards the end, right, to see if there's any injuries, see if they can get a little bit more from him. I mean, ideally, in a great world for the Raiders, he balls out in the preseason, and some teams like, hey, yeah, we definitely need to go get him, and then they make the move.
But Q, you do agree if they put him in the practice squad, he's gone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. If they took Cam Miller off the practice squad, they're taking Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about it. And so I just don't see, opening day roster, you having 3 quarterbacks. That's my understanding. So I can agree with the Q's point, during training camp or sometime before the regular season, that final roster is cut. I just don't see them having opening day having 3 quarterbacks on the roster.
Yeah, I hope they can. I think they can get something for Aiden O'Connell. I think you might be able to get.
You can. Absolutely.
Yeah, other than just letting him go, going off the practice roster as well. This one actually comes from another episode. King 100 LA says, with reports of Mekhi Lemon's draft stock dropping and possibly dropping to the 2nd round, if he is available at pick 36, should the Raiders take him?
Where did he get that report?
Why is he dropping?
I think it was because of his stance or something like that. Like people were saying that because he was projected extremely high at one point, where people were saying he's like the best wide receiver in the draft. But there is some talk that he may fall in the draft, but this is just like speculation. But if he
fall down and trip on his way up to the podium to get
his hug Roger Goodell.
Yeah, like he ain't falling far. He ain't gonna be around in round 2. Trust and believe that. There's
I just don't. I mean, of course, you always, if you're a general manager, something that entices you about familiarity when guys have played with one another and so certain systems. There's something because you think that there's a possibility of gelling and chemistry in the locker room, but you don't jump out of your seat to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it has to make sense.
Okay. This one coming from Brandon Coleman 4013, good friend of the show as well, always dropping comments and liking the content. Are you guys comfortable with Isaiah Palomal as a starter? I think we need to add a guy fairly early.
I mean, I'm comfortable with him right now. He's going into the last year of his deal. Him and Jeremy Chin both. The safety room definitely needs to be addressed. I've been saying AJ Halsey from LSU. If he ends up being there at 36 and maybe they draft him a little bit higher than expected, I'm okay with that. Dude's a playmaker, sideline to sideline, creates turnovers. I don't need any more. Yeah, sign me up. I'll take AJ Halsey every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah, Palomal's not a single high safety for me, but I do think he's a starter. And because we have yet to see the coverage package designed within this defense, there's a lot to be desired. I think he's a capable starter. I think he's somewhat of a ball hawk, has put himself in the right place at the right times. More times than not, I like the way he takes angles to attack running backs coming out. But I definitely think he's a starter. But you have to add more room to that safety. I mean, more names to that safety room.
I do like how he's grown. I have to give him a lot of credit. From the minute that he was thrown into that position, he has grown in a major way, and you can see him more comfortable, especially when it comes to dislodging the ball. When he's coming to put a hit on a wide receiver, and he's even got called for a couple penalties, but it's really bang bang with him. I think he's done a really good job with that. I just think there's still more room for him to grow.
All right, and we'll pick you back off, Braden, because he has another one. I'm very curious if y'all have concerns with D'Angelo Pons at corner back in the second round. Maybe if we trade back, he's small but has elite numbers, and he's elite athletically.
I have no problems with D'Angelo Pons. I think he's a great player, right? I hate the fact that I have so many guys in the second round that I would love to take. That's the problem, right? You can't take everybody, right? But D'Angelo Pons, he's small. He's very Amik Robertson-like when it comes to size, but he's also very Amik Robertson-like when it comes to dog. He is absolutely that dude. He's got that, that Miami, kind of swag to him where he's not worried about who he's going up against. He's ready to battle it out. He's a guy that can go attack the ball. He makes plays. He's tough, physical. I would love to say, I think people are going to put him inside because of his size, but I honestly believe that he can play on the outside. Not every matchup he's going to win, but I think he could definitely compete with the best of them.
I was always labeling it up as the Raiders definitely need a slot corner. And Pons fits the bill for me. Honestly, he might not be able to cover tight ends per se, the size difference, but against most of the slot receivers I see around the league, I think he fits the bill. So I wouldn't have any problem.
Yeah, I think the biggest conversation is like, who are the Raiders going to take at 36? And I think that's
everybody. They're taking everybody. They're taking Mekhi Lemon. He's dropping. They're taking AJ Halsey because he's a ball hawk. Taking D'Angelo Pons. They're taking Boston. They're taking, who do you like, Shantelle? Name the player. They're taking
Howell. If Cassius Howell drops, yes,
they're
you
taking offensive linemen for Big Link. They're taking everybody.
Okay, so Warlock 67, and this is his question for the squad. Who is your personal choice with the second and third picks in
there
the draft?
It goes.
Whether we trade up or down. And so really quick, if you guys have any, I mean, it's a toss up. Like I don't think
AJ Halsey, man. I'm just gonna stick with AJ Halsey.
I'd like for him to go defensive tackle this second pick.
Yeah, and
or safety.
See, that's it. The Caden McDonald. What if he drops?
Yeah. Well, that's
Caden McDonald's there. How could you pass him up, right? I mean,
I've seen so many mock draft scenarios where I had guys fixated. Oh, that 36 pick, they're going to come. Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's gone there. He's gone. So, there's a scenario there. So the Raiders have so many needs across the boards. Most people thought that I would think they would go with an offensive lineman. Well, I think you can get a good offensive lineman, especially what you added with Tyler. You can get him in the third round. Possibly. But I also think you still have unproven commodities on that offensive line, and we have to see them play. So there's that, factor. But, for me, I don't have a personal name because all these mock drafts, they just throw shade at everyone I think is going to 36. It's like, He's not going to be there.
Caden McDonald, he would be a great one, I think.
There we go.
You know, the young man out of Ohio State, he's a heck of
I
a
have
player.
no problem with that. He's a heck of a player. I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you were saying that really early too. So if he slips to the Raiders in the draft, that would be
Those are two of my favorite defensive guys, AJ Halsey and Caden McDonald. But I know that you can't have both, right? And both guys won't be there. Most likely, neither one of those guys will be there around 3. So you've got to make a decision. And again, it's all about how the board plays out, you know?
Yeah.
So many questions. We'll have the answers sooner rather than later.
Exactly. The draft is coming up.
And I'll be there to check it out.
Yeah, Q's going to keep us updated. And
better dress warm, Q.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, it's going to be a little bit cold there in April,
I
right?
was in Green Bay last year. I'll be all right.
Oh, yeah, you'll be all right.
Yeah, and by then Q should have his internet figured out too. So we're gonna be fine by draft day. We're not gonna be on dial-up anymore. Just playing.
Your own people, man. Be your people.
All right, Raider Nation, we'll be back after the weekend. Enjoy the weekend and make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you then.